28 years later happening should be exciting, but one detail ruined it. Danny Boyle's return to the apocalyptic world he helped create with 28 Days Later should have been a triumph. The long-awaited 28 Years Later sequel has all the makings of an event: the return of original creators, a potential trilogy, and the opportunity to revive one of the most genre-defining horror stories of the 21st century. Yet, for all the excitement surrounding the project, there's one troubling detail that's put a damper on the enthusiasm, and it threatens to undermine everything the sequel is supposed to stand for. That detail? Cillian Murphy's reported limited involvement. The return of a horror landmark. Let's start with the good news. 28 Years Later is finally happening. Fans have waited over 2 decades to see what became of the Rage virus, the remnants of a broken Britain, and the survivors who tried to navigate a world turned into a nightmare. The 2002 original 28 Days Later wasn't just another zombie film. It redefined the genre with its bleak tone, kinetic visuals, and terrifyingly fast infected. It was revolutionary. 28 weeks later, the 2007 sequel continued the story with new characters and a broader scope, but without Boyle and writer Alex Garland at the helm, it lacked the same soul. Now, with both creatives returning, and rumors of a new trilogy, 28 Years Later should feel like a homecoming. Except it doesn't quite. Cillian Murphy was the heart of the original. The magic of 28 Days Later didn't come just from its infected hordes or its dread-drenched streets of London. It came from the humanity at its core, and no one embodied that better than Cillian Murphy's Jim. He wasn't a superhero or a soldier. He was a confused, terrified man who woke up in a world that had collapsed while he slept. Through Murphy's performance, audiences saw fear, resilience, and ultimately, a will to survive. Jim's journey in the original film, from hospital bed to hardened survivor, gave 28 Days Later its emotional weight. His character arc was as much about reclaiming humanity as it was about survival. So, to hear that 28 Years Later might include Murphy in a limited or cameo-style capacity, or worse, not at all, feels like a massive missed opportunity. The timeline demands his return. If this were a standard reboot or a story set in a completely different country or context, the absence of Jim might be easier to accept. But this is 28 Years Later, a title that directly invokes the passage of time from the original story. The timeline screams for resolution. What happened to Jim? Did he survive? Did he help rebuild? Did the virus come back and ruin everything again? There's a narrative elegance in bookending Jim's story after all these years. Having him be part of the film in a major capacity could bring closure to fans and elevate the film's emotional stakes. Imagine an older, battle-worn Jim, still carrying the trauma of the first outbreak, facing the resurgence of the virus in a world that thought it had moved on. That's powerful storytelling. Hollywood's obsession with cameos isn't enough. In today's cinematic landscape, franchises are often satisfied with legacy cameos. A familiar face pops up, says a few lines, gets a slow zoom in, and disappears, enough to trigger nostalgia, but rarely enough to mean something. If 28 Years Later falls into that trap with Cillian Murphy, it will reduce one of horror's most iconic characters to little more than a marketing gimmick. Murphy's stature has grown immensely since 2002. Thanks to Peaky Blinders and his Oscar-winning performance in Oppenheimer, he's now a global star. Bringing him back to this world could lend the film a gravitas and authenticity no amount of visual effects or jump scares could replicate. But only if he's treated like more than a footnote. There's still time to fix this. Nothing is set in stone, at least, not publicly. Details about the plot of 28 Years Later remain tightly under wraps, and Cillian Murphy has expressed interest in